Hello everyone and welcome to the video. In today's video, I'm going to be teaching you guys how to solo group content such as group dungeons or statics. Now, the most important thing that you have to remember in this video is that this is not for a brand new character without any spec or 8.3 gear. Everything I tell you guys in this video is assuming you have at least 1600 IP in the sets you pick. Now, with all that stuff out of the way, let's get into the video. Now, the most important part of your build is going to be your weapon. And for your weapon, you have three choices. You can either use a battle axe. This is the cheapest option you can go with. An 8.3 battle axe is around 4.7 million. It's less than 5 million, so it's pretty damn cheap. You can get a battle axe or you can get a shadow collar. This is the best option, but it's also the most expensive option. Now, if you want to find a middle ground between a shadow collar and a battle axe, you have a druidic staff. A druidic staff is slightly more reliable than a battle axe because it has a better heal spell. The damage is also not bad from the Q and W, but it just, it's lackluster all around. These two weapons are quite dull, so if you can afford it, definitely go for a shadow collar. It's a lot better than a battle axe or a druidic staff, but battle axe and druidic staff will work just fine if you have a low budget. Now coming to the offhands, Musak is probably the best offhand you could use if you're on a low IP set that's around 1500 IP. That is possible with 8.3 gear and no spec whatsoever. So if you're a new player who just swiped your card and you want to get your sets but you don't have any spec on them, get a Musak instead of a crypt candle. Now I'll talk about the crypt candle later. Now the reason why the Musak is so good is because of its passive bonus to everything. You get a lot more healing, you get a lot more damage, and the most important thing is that it does not nerf your defense like a crypt candle does, but it does make your spells cost a lot more energy. So to combat the Muisak's energy drain, you will need a Scholar Call or a Limber Skip. I'll talk about these items in detail later. Now the second offhand is the Mist Collar. Now the Mist Collar is really good for the druidic staff because it can really take advantage of the low cooldowns provided by the Mist Collar. With any other weapon like the Shadow Collar or the Battle Axe, you're better off with either a Musak or a Crypt Candle. Now let's go with the Crypt Candle. Crypt Candle is by far the best option of the three, and this is also an item that you should be using if you have maximum specs and a good build. Use this after you build some confidence in the content, so just don't get melted as soon as you put it on. Now let's go to the helmet slot. We have the Spectre Hood. It works great for either the Hellion jacket or the Mercenary jacket. This basically resets your armor cooldown to 0 right after you use it. So let's assume I just used my Hellion jacket and it's on a 30-second cooldown. If I press this helmet skill, the cooldown will be reset to 0. So yeah, it's pretty broken. Now let's go to the Mage Call. Mage Call is simple. There's not really much you can say about this. It's just damage. You get some nice damage, that's all. And the Scholar Call. The Scholar Call is really underrated in my opinion. A lot of people skip over this item because it's not as flashy as the Spectre Hood or the Mage Call. This is a really good defense buff. If you're playing safe and you can't afford a Spectre Hood and your build is also really mana hungry because of the Musak, you can use a Scholar Call. This will give you a lot of defense and it will give you great energy regen to support your mana hungry builds. Now let's go on to the armor slot. In the armor slot we have a Hellion jacket, a Stalker jacket and a Mercenary jacket. Now on all of these jackets, if you are looking for speed, Stalker jacket's the best one. If you have 100 spec on stalker jacket, go with the stalker jacket. You will be really fast in your clears. But if you're a newer player or a player who is new to soloing group dungeons, stick with the Hellion jacket. Hellion jacket is your best friend in the first few dungeons you do. This will carry you so hard in the pulls. The amount of healing you can get from this jacket is insane. Now let's talk about the stalker jacket. Stalker jacket is a damage spell. It's quite simple. Just press the button and everything around you melts. So the only drawback with this stalker jacket is that it requires very high tier armor and very high specs. Now what do I mean by this? If you're using a 8.3 stalker jacket with no spec, you'll get absolutely destroyed in the group dungeons. But if you're using a 8.3 Hellion jacket without any spec, it will work fine. It will actually carry you pretty well. Now that's it for the stalker jacket and Hellion. Now let's talk about the mercenary jacket. The mercenary jacket is mostly useless if you can equip 8.3 items. If you are already using 8.3 items, you probably don't need this, but if you are a newer player with low IP sets around 1500 IP, you can switch to mercenary jacket for bosses. It's pretty good for bosses. So yeah, that's it on the mercenary jacket. Now let's go to the cape slot. The capes, we have three options on the capes. The Avalonian cape, in my opinion, the best one. It does some damage and also reduces the amount of damage your enemies deal by 15%, which is a pretty massive debuff. If you can properly utilize this, it's going to be really nice. And the cooldown is also quite short at 30 seconds. Pretty great cape overall. Now the Limhurst cape. The Limhurst cape is again for the mana hungry builds with the Musak. If you're using a Musak, go with the Limhurst cape or either Scarlet Call. Don't use both of these at the same time. Now, the Thetford cape, really simple. A bunch of extra damage and really low cooldown. Can't go wrong with a Thetford cape. Now the boots. We have a really different options on boots too. We have the Cultist sandals which improve your damage overall. So if you're using a pure DPS build, this is the boots you want to use. And if you're using a Hellion jacket too, if you have a Hellion jacket like this with maximum specs and you can use a Cultist sandals, the amount of healing you receive from your Hellion jacket will be increased by a lot because you are using a Cultist sandals. Now let me give you guys a quick demo with and without Cultist sandals. Right. So I'm getting 32 healing per tick without Cultist sandals active. We'll see with Cultist sandals now. I'm getting 40 heals per tick. That's with the Cultist sandal active. That's an increase of 8. You guys probably think it's not that big, but when you're fighting against 5-10 mobs at once, that's absolutely huge. And this also increases your lifesteal from the Shadow Collar and your Roast Pork. So yeah, Cultist sandals are amazing if you are a DPS type lifesteal build, which is conveniently the type of builds we go for when we are soloing group content. Now again, after that we have the Guardian Boots. The Guardian Boots are a staple in these types of builds. Everyone loves them. The only flaw with the Guardian Boots is that when you are in the giant form, you take 50% less damage. That's pretty good, but when you are in the giant form, if you use any healing spell like the Shadow Caller's E, Battle Axe E, Druidic Staff E, or the Hellion Jacket, your healing will also be cut in half. So you have to be very careful not to use any heals when you are in the giant form. That's it for the Guardian Boots. After that we have the Shoes of Tenacity, another pretty staple item. So this is kind of a crutch in my opinion. If you're a new player, or I keep saying a new player, I should probably not say that. So if you're a beginner in soloing group content and you don't want big repair bills, use this item. It will give you a shot in miss every 10 seconds. So it's a safety crutch. But after you get good at the content, you can swap this out for cultist sandals. Now that's it for the weapons and armors. Now let's look at the consumables that we use for this content. The most important part is the roast pork. The roast pork is amazing, as everyone knows. It gives you 9.45% lifesteal. We can just round it off to 10%. So it's basically 10% lifesteal on all of your damage, which will absolutely carry you through the dungeon, even with a stalker jacket or a low tier set. Now, the other important consumable is an invisibility potion. These potions saved me so many repair bills in my playthrough. Just use a invisibility potion if you're about to get down, and that will save you for sure. Okay, now that we have all of the general information out of the way, let's discuss about how you actually assemble your build. For this, just go with any weapon you want out of the three, it really does not matter. Now, after you pick a weapon, you have to choose what offhand you want to use with the weapon. Now, if you have high specs and you don't need any extra healing or extra defense, go with the crypt candle. Now, if you then again have high specs and you don't need Spectre Hood or Scholar Call to carry you with their healing, go with the Mage Call. If you don't have high specs, go with the Spectre or Scholar. Now, in my case, I'm obviously maxed out, so I'll go with the Mage Call. Now, here's the difficult choice. If you want your build to be safe and reliable, go with the Hellion. It's a lot easier to play with the Hellion. But if you just want absolute clear speeds, go with the Stalker. The Mercenary Jacket, as I said before, is quite useless for you at this point if you are using this type of gear. This is for newer players. Now for the cape. Avalon cape is the best in slot. Cultist sandals I have told you guys before. And that's it. This is my favorite build for soloing group dungeons. Now I will show you guys some clips on how to pull this off properly. Right, let's get into that. Okay, we are in our group dungeon, and the first thing you have to do right after you enter the dungeon is hit your foot buff. It's very important. If you forget this, you will get a repair bill. And try not to waste your big spells on trash mobs like that, because the spells have around 30 seconds on cooldowns. You don't want to waste them. Now let's see how to use this spell properly. Now the most important thing is to learn how many mobs your set can handle, and don't pull more than you can handle. Basically, just get everything together, use your DPS combos, use the healing spell when you're low, and you should be pretty good. See, these mobs did not stand a chance. They all got absolutely melted. Of course, this one survived because of his little shield here. Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of the build. Then again, this is not a build guide, so I'll show you guys how to actually do pulls. Now, in pulls like this, you always want to get the ranged mob closer to the melee one, so that you can hit every single mob at the same time with your high DPS melee spells. Okay, we have a pretty tough boss here. This guy is not very easy. So this will be a pretty good example on how to do bosses for you guys. Now the most important thing when you are killing a boss is it's a race of damage. So when you're doing races of damage, you should just spam everything you have right off the bat without saving anything. Just use everything you have. Heals, damage, all of the spells. Just use every spell and focus on dodging. You have to prioritize dodging his attack more than you prioritize getting your own attacks in, so you don't take much damage. Now I'm getting sniped by the archer there. That might actually mess up this pull, but we'll see. Should be good. See, I already have all of my spells back in like 2 seconds. Go in, use all of your DPS. Actually did not see that mine. Can't believe I got hit by that. Now, cancel your spell for dodging. You'll lose some DPS, but it's not worth taking extra damage. So it looks really bad, but it's probably fine because I'll get my spells back soon. And it's not fine. So in cases like this, just use an invisibility potion and dip out. Alright, second try without the archer sniping me. See, that's why you always carry the invisibility potion. It always saves you. Again, dump all of your DPS and focus on dodging his attacks more than getting your own attacks in. There's also a bunch of guys throwing barrels at me. Should have probably killed those guys first, but should be fine. Walk back. Go back in with the DPS. See how much easier it is this time because I don't have that stupid archer sniping at me. Out of energy almost. Dodge. Just walk in here. And that's it. That's the fight. $86. Not bad. Oh, it's 88. I do not know why I read it as 86. Okay, let's see what we have here. See, another melee mobs. So it's just a bunch of melee mobs here, so not very complicated. Just walk them all together and dodge their stun locks. Use your beam. It's all, they are dead. It's very simple with this build. Should have probably picked a weaker build to show it off properly. Okay, we have a pretty good example on ranged mobs here. So there's some melee mobs over there and a ranged mob here. So when you're doing this, just walk closer to the melees and you can kite them back to the ranged mob so that all of these mobs are piled up on each other. This will allow you to use your big DPS combos and lifesteal on all of the mobs at the same time, which is very important when you are doing this. If you have a ranged mob sniping at you while you're fighting melee mobs, you're bound to lose. So always pull the melee mobs closer to the ranged mob when you are fighting multiple mobs at the same time. See, this is a simple pull. Just melee. Just bring them all into the same clump and beat them up. That's all there is to it. Okay, we have another fairly difficult pull ahead. See, there's 3 ranged mobs in this room, all scattered around, and some melee mobs. For this, you just aggro everything and walk in a single direction so they all clump up together. After that, use your heals, and that should get you through it. See, every single one of them fit into that little circle, and they all got hit by every single spell you have. That's what you want to aim for on every single pull. Okay, so when you have things like these barrels in the dungeon, you can use them for really a lot of extra damage. So try and get the mobs in there if possible. It's not mandatory, but it speeds things up. Look, they died in like 3 seconds. See? Use the barrels if you can. That will really speed it up. Okay, in this room we have quite a lot of stuff going on. So typically when you have a room like this, uh, when you aggro the boss, it will just aggro everything out of nowhere. So you have to be careful. And I almost died while telling you guys to be careful. Yeah. So don't hit the boss when you're doing rooms like this until you have cleared all of the side mobs first. See, the barrels really got him down. I think he got caught up in like what, 4 explosions. Ah, keeps interrupting my Q spell of all things. I'll go load this. Oh. What do we get? 10k? Yeah, 10k. Okay, I cleared the dungeon. Got around 300k from it. It's not actually that bad. And yeah, I hope you guys learned how to solo group dungeons from this video. Another video is really long, but yeah, it's mostly information. I could not cut out all of it. I will try to trim the dungeon as much as possible to keep it short, but yeah, that's it for the video, guys. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.